Howdy. I don't know what I'm about to talk about today. There's not a real lot going on, but I just watched a video of Jeff Beck. If you don't know who Jeff Beck is, he was a legendary guitarist. He died maybe in last year or possibly 2023. I think last year, which was terribly sad. But he was one of the he was mixed up with the Yardbirds. There was three great guitarists came out of the Yardbirds. Eric Clapton being the most notable, arguably. Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin being the other, and Jeff Beck was the third. And he had a string of underappreciated albums in the 70s, mostly instrumental. He played guitar in, well, it's a Jeff Beck band, but it was one of Rod Stewart's first bands. Rod Stewart actually sung for Jeff Beck. This is, to guitar fans, this is old news, but check it out. If you like instrumental guitar, he's got some great albums and he's got some great videos on YouTube. I don't know why I brought that up, other than the fact that I was literally just watching a video before I pressed the record button. So I have a eclectic taste when it comes to music, so let's just explore some of it. I touched on some of it when I was doing my last video. That I'm a big fan of the 70s, 60s, older sort of music. I grew up in the 90s. And I look back on a lot of 90s music now, and some of it I appreciate. I think that's pretty timeless, but then some of it I just think, geez, we really lived through a decade of shit there. And you can dig deep into the 2000s and the 2010s and the 2020s, and I'm sure you'll find some great music. And I do. I listen to some current music, but not a real lot. I'm actually, since about 2016, I've been, I grew up on country music. My old man was a country fan, and I always loved Johnny Cash. I've got a big Johnny Cash back job tattoo, just because I think that's a connection between me and my old man. There's a story to it, but me and the old man don't have a hell of a lot to talk about. We're not, we're close as in I love him because he's my old man and he's proud of me because I'm his son, but we don't have our lives don't cross in too many ways, but that's one thing that we always sort of shared, was the love of Johnny Cash. But I digress. Since 2016 I've sort of fallen back into country music. There has been some really great country music being brought out in the last, I'd say, 15 years. I'm a big fan of Sturgill Simpson, Jamie Johnson, Chris Stapleton. I was just watching his video not 5 minutes ago. Tyler Childers, he's great, and then but he sort of went a little bit. Look, I was a bit of a lefty, and it does sort of rot your brain a little bit. So he went that way, It's the ideology has overtaken the art, and it's a shame. It's a shame, but I don't know. People are saying he's got into shit since he got sober, but I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I getting sober was one of the greatest things of my life, so I'm just going to assume that him getting sober is one of the greatest things. He's one of the greatest moments of growth. I'm willing to bet that's what he'd class it as. But yeah, I don't think he's. I tend to agree. I think his music has sort of nosedived in the last 3 albums or so. Where else? What else do I listen to? I love the 70s rock and roll, Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, especially the English bands. As far as American bands go, there's not a lot that really lights my fire. Guns N' Roses, when I was a kid, they were great, but as I get older, I sort of, I've veered away from them a little bit. They do it, once in a while. I'll pull up an old gem and it's like, oh, I forgot about that one. That's a great song. But I wouldn't sit there and listen to Guns N' Roses. The Stooges. Stooges is great. Great American band. Iggy Pop, his early solo stuff, pretty top notch. What else? Johnny Thunders, that's an acquired taste. He left all the rough edges on old Johnny Thunders. The funny thing is a lot of the music is seen as these, beautiful, sickly sweet pop songs from the 60s, and he's updated them in the 70s and, as a rabid junkie. And they've just got this air of menace. So if you haven't heard of Johnny Thunders or, his original band, the New York Dolls, I implore you to go out and check them out. Yeah, that's about enough talking for rock and roll. I love me blues. Lightning Hopkins he's still high rotation. I went through about, I reckon, 10 years where I listened to nothing but blues. Mississippi Fred McDowell, Furry Lewis. I love the country blues. Buddy Guy was probably one of the greatest performers I've ever seen in my life, and I saw him when he would have been mid-70s, and he's this old black dude, and every woman in the audience was just like, just dripping just because of the way he was playing his guitar, and he just holds your attention, and just an ultimate showman. I saw B.B. King before he died, but he was on the nose dive down, and that was a bit sad to see. He couldn't stand up or nothing, and I'm sure maybe I was probably a little bit too drunk or on drugs to appreciate it fully. I saw Bob Dylan on that show, that festival as well, and I was completely underwhelmed by him. I love his 60s stuff, but there's not a real lot that interests me about Bob Dylan, not past the at least mid-70s. And then, look, what do you think? Have I got worthwhile taste? Are there any new bands that, may resonate with what I've just been mentioning, that I maybe haven't heard of, or maybe I just haven't mentioned them and I'm a closet fan of them? Smash that like and subscribe, and leave a comment. What do you think about me music tastes, and what would you recommend I listen to? Today's a beautiful day to be alive. It's the 13th of November 2025.